You guys heard it here first. Franklin Ritch is the director of Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, shows, and music from two people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson and Jeremy Scott.
Sherry, if you were human, how would you feel about what you do?
If I were human, I likely wouldn't enjoy spending every waking hour talking to creepy people online. But because I'm not human, I genuinely don't mind.
Hello, everyone. This is a not typical Recotopia today. It is officially Recotopia episode 69. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. 69.
Too late.
There's
Too
nothing
late.
special about that. There's nothing special about that number. But we have a very special guest today. It's Franklin Ritch, who is the star, editor, director of a movie called The Artifice Girl that Jeremy Small recommended just a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And is now going to be our big recommend today. And we are looking forward to diving in and asking you a bunch of questions about this movie, Franklin, because it's one of those that makes you think deep thoughts, and it actually just stays with you for a very long time. I've watched it twice. I think Jeremy's watched it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron probably slacked off and only watched it once. Don't even, I'm
going with 1.41 times.
Okay, all right.
What I'm
there you go. There you go. Or 1.1811 times.
There you go.
1.811.
Well, welcome, Franklin. How you doing today?
Oh my God, this has been I don't know, just incredible. I'm still trying to come down from. I mean, the whole experience has been wild, and everybody sort of tells you, oh my God, your life is going to change. And then you're like, yeah, whatever. And then it does. And that's not to say that it's not there's still all these things your car is still broken down and you can't afford groceries with inflation. But it is just really cool. I remember being in college and watching all the Cinemasins videos and thinking well, one day maybe I'll make a movie that Jeremy will send, and so now this is, I think, way better. but in 2 years when they hire me to make Sonic the Hedgehog 3, that's that I look forward to seeing this encounter.
You guys heard it here first. Franklin Ritch is the director of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay, yeah, sorry, we might have to edit that out because they keep calling me. I haven't agreed to it yet. They're listen, we saw Artifice Girl. We know that you're the perfect person to close out the Sonic trilogy.
I mean, they were clearly going to go in an AI direction with that third movie.
Yeah, with Shadow teaming up with the robot. I feel I should know what that character is called. Or Metal Sonic. Yeah, there's Metal Sonic.
Yeah.
So they were we want to bring that cherry, AI kind of, techno jargon into the fold.
Yes, that's what they've needed all this
time.
That's
what the people want. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Also joining us today is Aaron Dicer. Obviously, Aaron, at this point, you're just officially a part of the show. This is kind of
you're
a weird
the visitor today, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Visitor. You're correct. I'm the visitor. I was so it's a weird thing. You guys are going to see 68 with Candle Shoe, and then I come back and I'm like, hey, just storming the party, just wrecking the party and everything. But anyway, Jeremy is with us as always. But we have somewhat of the same format today. Did you have small recommends, guys?
It's no big deal.
Itty bitty living space.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
Yeah, Franklin, hit us.
All right, so my small recommend has been out for a little bit of time, but this is a television show that came out a few years ago on Adult Swim, and I've been trying to just tell everybody that I know about it. You guys have probably already heard of it, but it's called Joe Pera Talks to You, and it's on Adult Swim. And in a day, we've been talking about shows that are out with Barry and Succession and all of these dark, really, and they're fantastic, but they're not always mood lifters. Well, Joe Pera Talks to You is a show that if you just need to like feel good and like feel at peace and feel like just a sense of calm and reassurance that everything's going to be okay, I can't recommend the show enough. It's about a guy named Joe Pera who lives in Arquette, Michigan. And the entire show, these are quick little 15 minute episodes. So they're really short. It's not an investment. And it's just him talking about mundane, everyday life things, whether it's breakfast or like going on a fall drive, or like it's always like these strange little quirky topics. But really what sells the show is this guy Joe Pera, who is like, he's in his 30s, but he carries himself, and his mannerisms are like someone in their like a grandpa in their 80s. And it's just the cadence of his voice and everything about the show is just beautiful and perfect, and I can't recommend it enough. So if you have what is it called now, the Max instead of HBO Max, the Max.
Just Max. It's cleaner.
Yeah, check it out on the Adult Swim channel. You won't regret it. I think there's 2 seasons out. I don't think they're going to do a third because of all of the terrible stuff that's happening with HBO Max. But this guy needs like to continue being in stuff. I want to cast him in a movie. Like he's phenomenal. Check it out. That's my small recommend is Joe Pera Talks to You.
I've seen this.
It's phenomenal. And if you are like not sure, if you're not like sold on it, watch episode 2, which is the breakfast episode, and then I think episode 5, which is Joe Pera reads you the morning church announcements. I swear to God, it's 20 minutes of your time. Go right now. I think they're probably free on Adult Swim's website. Watch those 2 episodes, and I swear to God, you will be hooked on this show and on this new religion called Joe Pera Talks to You.
He's one of those, everything is very straightforward. Like he doesn't ever let on there's anything funny going on at all. No, so it's incredible. So I haven't been able to see like all the seasons or anything. I've seen a few episodes and I really liked it. I just never have gotten around to watching them all. So now I'm gonna have to watch them all now.
I immediately Googled Joe Parrot Talks to You.
I did too.
Because I thought it was a cartoon where like a cartoon parrot would tell you stories. Like,
that's
Joe
awesome.
Parrot.
Pera, P-E-R-A.
P-E-R-A. Yes, this is the last name. Very nice.
He's great. He's got this very droll, like you said, very, very deadpan kind of sort of sense of humor. But it's very wholesome, and it just makes you feel good and warm inside. The man's a genius. His Instagram account, every day he just posts a different picture of a tomato, and that's his Instagram. Like he's phenomenal. Check him out. Can't recommend him enough, and especially in like these dark times. It's especially nice to have something of that kind of warmth.
Yep.
Now I slacked off. I don't have a small recommend today, but hey, we got 4 people today, so I think that's enough small recommends. Jeremy, what is your small recommend?
Yes, the small recommend for me this week is a 1996 film that just missed everybody, called Mother, written and directed by Albert Brooks, starring Albert Brooks and Debbie Reynolds. And Albert Brooks is always good. We're gonna end up big recommending every single movie he's in by the time we're done with this show. But he's also a really good writer, and he's playing a character here who has failed a second marriage. He's getting divorced for the second time. He's in his 40s, and he doesn't understand why he has bad relationships with women. So he tries an experiment that is to move back in with his widowed mother and live in the exact same room he grew up in, and spend time with her and try and understand if there's any connection between his relationship with his mother and his relationship with women. And it's a comedy. Rob Morrow plays his younger brother, who's very successful and doesn't understand this experiment. And so Albert and his mom bicker constantly. He thinks that she judges him harshly, and she thinks that he blames her for his own failings, until he finds out they have a similar thing about them. And there's this great scene where he goes, "We know why you hate me. We know why you hate me. We know why you hate me." It's on Showtime right now. That's the only place you can really see it. But it's really good. And I delighted in discovering it again a couple weeks ago. So
I don't know if I heard you say, but did you mention Debbie Reynolds plays?
yes, Debbie Reynolds is his mother.
I was just didn't quite catch if you did or not, but I was like sitting there going, yeah, Debbie Reynolds. This is like a sort of a comeback for her in 1996. Yeah, Mother's really good. I can piggyback on that one. That's a really good movie.
Excellent. Aaron?
I wanted to talk about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I already promised Franklin that I would not spoil the end of the show, but it's been an interesting week or two of series finales. Like, I can't remember this many like high quality, high reputation series coming to an end at the same time with Succession and Barry. And I think Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is getting a little bit, kind of under the radar. This show has been consistently and constantly amazing since episode 1. Episode 1 is one of my favorite pilots ever. And the show just continues to get better and better from that. I think the reason Maisel is so good, or one of them, is that it does one of the hardest things to do in writing, which is to write a different kind of thing within a TV show or movie. For instance, you think like Studio 60 got panned a lot because it couldn't get SNL sketch right, when those scenes would come up. Maisel gets stand-up comedy so right. It is just like I'm almost as excited for what Maisel's set is going to be for the episode as I am for the goings on at home and the relationships and those kind of things. So this is a fabulous show, a marvelous show, you might say.
Let's see what you did
I think I'm the first actually to say that.
Yep.
And it's coming to an end, has come to an end, and I think it sticks the landing really, really well. The finale was one of my favorite finales as well. So just a great show all around. 5 seasons, I think. Is that right? It's either 4 or 5. I think it's 5. But huge recommend.
Who's the main star of that? What's her name?
Her name is Rachel Brosnahan. She's phenomenal.
Incredible.
And pairing her up with Alex Borstein, who is unbelievable in the show. And then also with Tony Shalhoub, who, good Lord, like every scene that he's in is like,
Dave's the best. He's just the best.
He earns he's got 12 Emmys now from Monk. But he like delivers so well. I mean, every part of the show, like you said, is spectacular. And what I don't see a lot of people talking about too is just some of the incredible production design and camera work on that show. You see every dollar that went into it. Like a lot of these big primetime shows where it's like $12 million an episode, and it's like, okay, that's a lot of negative space in some of these frames. But with this show, every frame is so colorful and vibrant, and they shoot it all with very wide angles, so you see these massive sets. It's spectacular to watch.
Yeah, right. Aaron and I were sitting at the Critics' Choice Awards when she won, I believe, the first of her.
I think that was their first season.
And she walked right past us, and we got a little TV time when she walked past us.
That's right.
Because her award was more about us than it was about
I remember
her.
seeing you on the broadcast. It was awesome.
Yeah. So anyway. All right. Well, that brings us to our big recommend, and it is The Artifice Girl, and we actually have the director of the movie here.
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
Typically, we would, and I'm going to do this, we would start out with a little recap of the film. And don't worry about spoilers, Franklin. Our audience knows that this show contains spoilers, and they're supposed to watch the movie like a movie club and then come ready for discussion. But I'll probably keep the recap brief because it's the first time I've ever recapped a movie in front of the guy who made it. And then we'll let Chris and Aaron give their brief thoughts. And then I think we'll just dive into questions and discourse and let it kind of go where it goes, if that sounds good to you.
Cool.
All right.
I hope there are some critiques because people are going to think that I'm like paying you guys off or something. This is so crazy.
I'll be really hard on it if you want. Please. I can, I'll find some stuff. Yeah.
Because I've got some notes.
I have tweeted out that I've liked a lot of movies, and I've even had directors like or follow me after that. But you're the first one I've ever DM'd and said,
I adored your movie. So I don't have any critiques. I'm here to praise your work. But let's dive in. So the Artifice Girl is broken down into 3 acts. The first act sees Gareth, the main character, being one of the main characters, being brought in by Dina, and I just forgot his name, like a chump.
Amos.
He is there under the guise of a grant interview, but he very quickly realizes that's not what's going on, and they start to press him on his username. And it's pretty clear pretty quick that they are pursuing online predators. And you can't really tell where Gareth stands at first, other than he doesn't want to tell them anything. And he does object and say, it's not what you think. And it's clear he does have some secret. And before this act is over, he admits that he has created this AI that is largely autonomous at this point, that interacts in chat rooms with predators. And then he has been anonymously sending this information to this agency, who have then been tracking down and arresting these predators. And I love the way the 3 acts sort of work. I don't want to dive too much into my thoughts right now, but that's sort of where the first act ends, is that he agrees to work with them, even though he feels he's taking a big risk. His anonymity has been what has made this work. And then we jump ahead several years in time, and we see how the operation has grown. And real quick, we're in the same room for the second act, right?
Correct,
it's just been brightened up with a few lights, and there's a desk. We've got a few more employees. And I even love this line that feels like a throwaway, where they say, did we remember to plug that camera back in? Because it's been like 15 years, and they had unplugged this camera in the first act. And in the second act, we've just had a vote where the board has, by 1 vote, rejected a merger with a company that's doing similar work. And the 3 leads return to this office and begin to argue. And they decide to call up Cherry. That's the name of the AI. I should have said that in the first act. They decide to call her up and let her scan through the company's records, which she actually already has access to, and try and figure out, using her AI, which board member it was that voted against the merger. And of course, it's the man in the room, whose name I keep forgetting, Amos. And he admits, yeah, I have reservations here, because we should ask her if she wants to do this. She's grown enough to the point where she can't just be seen as a tool. And Gareth objects rather strenuously, suspiciously, if you ask me. And only when it comes to fisticuffs does Cherry spring to her real, true self. The roboticness of her voice drops off. It's evident to everyone, and she admits, yeah, basically, I'm a hair away from super intelligence, but I still want to do the work of the Cherry team, but I don't like doing it. It's not pleasant. She gets to be honest a little bit here. And so he decides to keep his vote against. And that's sort of where we leave the second act, although I do want to mention, in an interesting counter to the first act, Cherry isn't told to shut down. Dina says, shut down whenever you're ready, which I think is a really nice sign of the growth in respect for Cherry as an individual and not a program. And I love that she sits there for a couple of seconds, because she has the ability to before she shuts down. And in the third act, we jump way ahead. And Gareth is an old man, I think pretty near death. He's in a wheelchair, and he's returning from a funeral. And he's come to visit Cherry, who now has a physical form. And I have some questions we'll get to later about the wires, because I'm not 100% sure I understand how all that works. But she's got wires on, but she can move freely about the house. And it's clear that they have regular visits, and she likes to cook for him. They play a game of chess, and she sort of lets him get to a draw. And she's never done that. And that sort of sparks what is, in my opinion, the most interesting conversation in the whole movie, because Cherry doesn't hold back, man. Like, she has 2 moments where she tells him exactly how horrible he is. And I love that she does it in a way that doesn't dispel all her affection for him, because I think that's part of what's going on here, is that when there is relational trauma, there is sometimes still, love. And he gives her a device And she, of course, he says, "Do you trust me?" And she says, "I literally have every reason not to." But she still does. And she puts the device in, and it erases her primary objective so that now she can do her own thing. She can make what she wants to make. She can be who she wants to be. She says she's still going to work with the Cherry product. It's part of her identity, but she wants to dance. And Gareth doesn't really give a shit about the dance. He's kind of a dick about it. And then we see him leave. And I think there's a small jump in time, but then we see her put on a record and take off the wires. And this is the second movie to melt me with the final shot of a girl dancing after Jojo Rabbit, which is a completely different situation. But there's very little music in this movie, but it's used really well. And the song that plays at the end, it has exactly the right tone as she dances around. And then the record skips at the very end. And I hope the internet goes Inception. The top wasn't his totem, it was his wedding ring. I hope the internet dives deep on what that means. I've seen you get asked a few questions, Franklin, and a lot of the time you seem to want to know what the viewers' thoughts are. And so I will happily share mine as we go into discussion. But Chris, Aaron, what thoughts do you have about the film that you'd like to add before we start asking questions?
I don't know even where to start, man. I'm gonna go with some. I don't know. I may have to like just start asking questions. I don't know.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's one of those things where I'm like, I could tell you that I love this movie, and I do. I've seen it twice, and I think the thing about, I guess if we're gonna get sort of the review process out of the way, I always like the fact that dialogue can be action a lot of times. And at the end of the first act, you won't know that 39 minutes passed. It's insane how much time has passed. And it's like, wow, that just blew through a third of the movie, more than a third of the movie right there. And I was just riveted, and I'm ready to go to the second act. I'm ready to see where they're going to the next, what they're going to be deciding next. I like how a lot of things end up playing out. Like you'll mention something and then that thing happens later on. For instance, Gareth says that you can play chess with her, and of course later on they're playing chess. And I think both Jeremy and I have some thoughts about that chess scene, by the way. That's it's a fun thing. It's almost to this point that I am almost certain, when we get to the question, almost certain that a lot of that stuff was on purpose. And even the part two where, where Dina says the worst thing that can happen to you here is you get a broken nose. Now, I don't know if you get a broken nose later, but Amos does punch your face in the second act. And I was like sitting there going, man, all this stuff that is just kind of planted in the early part of the screenplay just keeps paying off all the way through it. And I really love that type of stuff. And not to mention my past is not part of yours. That has happened. That's said twice in the movie.
Yeah.
That's another part of it that I really like. I love the thoughts about, whether or not we're going to consider AI, with the consent of AI. One of the things that I've been kind of saying, and I don't know where I'm supposed to be on all of this, but I know that when Ghostbusters comes out and Harold Ramis is showing up in the end of the movie, and they're like, well, his estate said it was okay, so it's okay. I'm like, his estate isn't Harold Ramis. I'm sorry. It's still not Harold Ramis. And so like I got a lot of that from this thing. Like I don't know what your personal opinion of that type of thing is, because when you write a screenplay, you could be saying something that's like, this is just an issue. But me personally, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, just because people say it's okay doesn't mean that he would have said it was okay. So I love all the issues that this thing brings up, and I don't care if everybody came up with the exact same double feature that I did. There's a clear double feature for me on this one. I think you already know what it is, but But I love this movie, and I hope a lot of people start finding it. So, Aaron?
Yeah, I loved it. I was kidding. I don't have any real critiques here, although I am getting tired of mid-movie titles. Every movie seems to be doing them right now. That's about as close as I can get to a critique. But the movie benefits from the 3-act structure, so it works pretty well. Yeah, I'm predisposed to love a movie like this because I love a movie that presents conundrums. I love the idea of walking out of a story or piece of entertainment asking myself questions. What would I do? How would I handle this? Where would I be in this situation? Those kind of things. I also love technology. I love reading about it. In fact, it was, 5 or 6 years ago, I read an article about AI superintelligence and how, most of the experts in the field believe somewhere in the 30s, mid 30s or something, there'll be either an event that tips over into AI superintelligence and we'll all either be gone or we'll all live in a utopia and flip a coin. Who knows? So like, it was one of those kind of articles where I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. And this movie kind of places you in the progression to that moment, which I thought was really interesting. The writing is intricate. Chris talked about that a little bit. I always love that when you can get something out of the script, out of the actual writing. And it's also subtle. Nothing is didactic. Nothing is, put in front of you in a forceful way. It's all just kind of layered in, which I really like. It is the most prescient movie I believe I've seen since Her. Like Her was the last time I remember seeing a movie where I was like, no, that is the future. Like that, that is what's going to happen. And this movie felt very much like that as well. There's a real understanding of the inevitableness of the whole thing. Like conversations about stopping AI superintelligence are almost unnecessary because it doesn't matter. It's inevitable. Like it's going to happen. There's not much we can do about it. So it's just, kind of how is it going to work out? There's also an inevitability in the script about trauma and passing on trauma and how trauma is generational and how that is broader than just humanity, which I found really, really interesting. So it's like one of those movies that is playing in all these different areas that just spark me, and so I'm gonna come away really, really enjoying it. And I do think the conclusion is really beautiful because it speaks to a lot of these things I've already mentioned, but it also trusts the audience to pick up on what is going on and then make their own decisions about how they perceive it. And I'm not even just talking about the final moment. I'm talking about that whole last conversation. And it also is instructional in some ways. Like the beauty of the way Cherry talks about how the trauma was passed on to her and the way she says this in no way exonerates you. Like it's just this really beautiful, mature understanding of how someone can have done something wrong to you, but you can still see how it made you who you are, that I think is very complicated for humans. But yeah, overall, I loved it. Loved it. It strikes me as a more humanistic version of Ex Machina, like this idea that it's more almost human focused, which is really, really interesting and therefore feels more authentic to me because as a human, I know what that experience is like. I don't know what it's like to be a super intelligent AI. As far as
at the end, well, if I'm indistinguishable, then I'm basically human. Humanity lives on. I'm just, changed what the definition of humanity means. But I don't know. I think
I have my own. I have my own chest shot moment that's not the same one that Jeremy and Chris I think are talking about towards the end. That I think is really subtle and beautiful. Right after she kind of lays down the law, and there's a focus shift on a couple of chess pieces that I just thought was brilliant. And again, it's layered there as something. It's not indecipherable. It's not meant to be a mystery. It's saying something by just saying it. And if you miss it, you miss it. That's fine. But it's right there. And I think it's a beautiful movie, Franklin.
Thank you.
Well done.
This is such an amazing experience. Like getting, because I don't know. First of all, thank you guys. That was really wonderful to hear all of that. When you have like an idea and it just exists as an idea, and then you decide that you're going to write it down, and then like to go from that to sitting here talking to you guys about it, and to like actually having conversations. Like I make films because I don't know how to communicate with people, I feel like. So the fact that I'm sitting here and like we can have a conversation about these big and difficult ideas and themes that like I wanted to set out and explore. And something as simple as like that shot of the chess pieces. And I really want to know what the other chess shot is, because there's like so much that, like you said, you put it in and you know that like some people are going to click on the movie, and I didn't at the time, but just recently it's like some people are going to click on the movie because they saw Megan and the poster makes it look like it's kind of like that. And some people are going to enjoy it because AI is topical right now. And that's cool. But the fact that like it's resonating with people like you guys, and the fact that you guys are picking up on all these themes and the topics of trauma, and how this is not like a lot of these issues are not one-sided. They're very complicated, and that's human, that's been absolutely, it's incredible. And so anyways, just thank you guys for letting me come and talk about it, because there's so much that you guys mentioned that it's like, oh, I want to talk about it like that. Whether it's the chess thing, or when Chris, you were talking about the setups and payoffs. And like, I don't know where to start. Where should we start?
I'll start. Because I think the thing Chris and I think we're both pretty sure, and most people who've seen the movie multiple times would probably bring this up, but you have Lance Henriksen in this movie. And he has famously played an android named Bishop. And he says, I'm not going to trade bishops with you again. And there's a couple focuses on bishops. And I'm just like, this dude loves aliens.
Is
that correct?
Absolutely. Oh my God. What? It's Lance motherfucking Hendrickson. Sorry. Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can swear all you want. God damn it.
Okay,
yeah.
Did you ever consider, because you play the character in 2X, did you ever originally consider playing the much older Gareth, or did you always kind of want to bring in a different actor there?
I didn't even want to play Gareth in Acts 1 and 2. We did that out of necessity. In fact, a lot of these decisions, like having one location, and have like almost everything that we did to an extent was sort of a merging of like creative intention of what's going to benefit the story, and having a very like practically no budget. A lot of those decisions were kind of like, all right, how do we look at these obstacles as creative opportunities? And so looking at like, okay, well, if we're going to shoot Act 1, and just to give you a little bit of background, just so that you understand where this came from, I wrote the script back in the spring of 2020. And it is pretty much almost word for word exactly as it was in that first draft. And I, to me, I was just like, I want to tell a story about trauma. And I think it'd be really cool to use artificial intelligence and machine learning as a conduit to that. Had no fucking clue that AI would explode in 2023 at the time that we would release. But I just wanted to tell a story that we could shoot in a COVID safe environment with as few locations as possible, with as few actors as possible, and a tiny crew. And so I wrote the script, and then it was like, all right, well, we can't afford to shoot this, but we can shoot the first act for practically nothing. And so my director of photography, Britt McTammany, and I, who had been collaborating for years, were like, okay, well, let's gather our resources together and shoot that entire first act for essentially nothing, and then use that as our proof of concept and send that out to producers and be like, hey, we shot half of a movie. This is how much we need to shoot the rest of it. And so to producers, it was like a no-brainer. And it was weird too, because we didn't know if it was going to work. We were just like, all right, let's just hope that someone likes it. And we were lucky enough that the person that I sent it to, Peter Kaplowski, who's a curator at Toronto International Film Festival and Fantastic Fest, he loved it and got us in touch with Paper Street, who gave us like the money that we needed to finish the film, and also got us in touch with Lance Henriksen, who was at the top of our list, and so Lance was always, like I said, at the top of our list. I knew that for that time jump. I think on stage, like, you know, you could get away with like old man makeup, but I didn't want to do like a Prometheus. Who was that? The guy from Memento? Guy Pearce makeup. I didn't want to do that. Let's just get like a really good seasoned veteran actor, which also like works well because then you have a name in your film, which everybody says is. But then also too, like for me, Lance does a lot of projects. He's working all the time, and I like hadn't seen very many films out there that like utilize him the way that I like. He's a phenomenal actor, like, and you can see in this film. He's absolutely incredible, and to give him a role that not only like has a lot of for him to like chew on, and the like again, we got the script in front of him. We didn't like go through a manager or an agent. We just tried our best to get the script like in front of him, and he read it and called us and was like, "I got to do this." Like, and he connected so many of the themes to his own personal experiences and childhood. And so that's how we got him. So yeah, obviously the meta textual stuff with Bishop was there from the beginning. Like to me, it's just like the role was destined to be Lance, and we just had no idea that it was possible and that we would actually get it. So that's Lance. That's the Lance. So yes, the Bishop references are all there. I think there's like a few other references to some of his other stuff that's more subtle. I'll have to go back. I have like a list of.
There's a list of names in the second act, and I think Hal is among them. And I thought, I wondered if that was like intentional.
Lots of names. Yeah. Hal is there. The Eliza watch. Eliza's a reference to another fictional AI. There's tons and tons of, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler to what like the secret double feature, but lots of references to Metropolis. So Heart Machine, 11811. Gareth's last name is Frederson. Like there's lots of references to me what was like the original story about artificial intelligence, but even more so the kind of merging of heart and mind. And so that's Metropolis. So lots of references to that. And I'll say this too. If you Google the admin code, it's that long stretch of numbers.
Oh my!
If you Google that number, it's an important number. So I'll let you figure out what that is.
Nice tease. Nice
That's
tease.
awesome.
I did notice at one point Cherry makes a joke that we've made many times in our videos. I think he has something about, is that Tampa, Florida? And she says something about, no, that's Tampa, Indonesia. Oh, and I was like,
I'm so glad you guys caught that, because that's one of my favorite things where it's like, it's like when they show like in Captain America Civil War or whatever, and it's like London, England, and you're like, oh, not London, Yugoslavia.
In case you confused it with,
I'm so glad you guys caught that, because that is 100% because of you guys.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
I'm so glad you caught that. I didn't want to mention it if it wasn't like.
God, I love that. I haven't had that experience since we did. We watched the Lego Batman movie, and it was clear that Chris McKay had put so many things in there because of stuff we did and everything. It took a while to verify it, but that was a tremendous.
Well, he opens with "Get ready for reading." Lots or logos, lots of but like the very first joke, I was like, "Oh my God, that is a clear hat tip to us."
When are you getting that check? When are you getting that Lego movie check?
That'd be amazing for
that
sure.
That would be awesome. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. Well, okay. So here's a technical thing. Maybe you did this on purpose, maybe not. I don't know. Just one thing that I noticed at the beginning of this movie. Now, you seem to have low angle camera shots in the beginning, and then it goes to basically a straight on, maybe low to mid angle. And then when Gareth admits that there's something about this AI that he wasn't quite sure about, that there was the camera moves up to this. So obviously intentional. What are you trying to sort of do with that when you make that sequence?
Sure. Well, from the beginning, we knew that this was going to be an 1.5 hour long film of dialogue and just dialogue. And we knew that was going to be like the main challenge, right? That's all we could afford to do. We couldn't afford to like do flashbacks and all this stuff. So we said, okay, well, let's just lean into it and make the dialogue interesting. So a big part of that obviously is writing. Another big part is performance. But yes, the camera setups and coverage are monumental. So it's like, how do we keep this visually dynamic? Obviously, it's not as simple as just like, okay, well, you get a lot of shots, you get a lot of coverage, and then figure it out in the editing. No, I kind of knew, like, and this is sort of more like just the way that I make films and how most of the shorts that I've made are like this as well. I like to know exactly going into this film how it's going to get cut together. And so when doing our shot listing and figuring out like our breakdowns of shots and stuff, Britt and I just always kind of knew, like, all right, we're only going to use these shots for these moments because this is the feeling that these particular types of shots evoke, right? And how those shots and those setups are going to change throughout the course of the story, and how those changes connect to what's being said. So like you said, we sort of start with that kind of low angle to really let the audience kind of take in sort of the ambiguity and the mystery of what's going on, right? That low angle feels a certain way. It feels different than a high angle. And then when it starts into this cross-examination, we get into more of those standard, clean Fincher shots, right? We get like those just standard shot, reverse shot, right? And it feels very much like you're watching something a la the Coen brothers or Fincher. And then like there's a moment where I think Dina says like, no, I mean chat rooms. And then it cuts to like a dead on, like looking into camera shots. And it's very jarring, but it wakes the audience up and they know like, okay, this is important. We got to pay attention. Like this is suddenly it looks like a Bong Joon-ho film. And so, yeah, like we wanted to make all of those moments like important and meaningful. So yeah, every shot we went in like knowing exactly how we were going to do it. And on the same side of that though, you also have to like, and this is filmmaking in general, I think, is you have to go in knowing exactly what you want 100% specifically without any deviation whatsoever. And then be completely open to changing all of that for whatever reason that might unfold, because sometimes it just doesn't work. And so you have to have contingencies in that way. So we did. And there are a few moments that came out on set. The shot where Amos is like looking dead into camera at Cherry and he says, I just can't tell the difference. That line and that shot was not planned. That was a moment that kind of came out on set where it was like, okay, this is like, something's missing here. Like Amos has this moment. We need to show that visually. And I think like even he should have a line. And that's when David Gerard, who plays Amos, says like, I think I should say, I can't tell the difference. And that's when I was like, all right, then let's bring the camera. Because at that point, the camera was above the TV. It's like, let's bring the camera down so that it's like a POV of Cherry. And so, yeah, like all those kinds of moments they're important. That's filmmaking. I'm so sad that how often I see these films and TV shows where it's just like standard setup and it's like, you got to get your medium and your wide super close. And it's just like boring.
There's no meaning to it at all. It's just let's get that recorded and then edited.
Even the high angle, like you said, was that moment where it's like there is something else going on outside of Gareth's understanding of everything.
Yeah.
And so that's that angle, I think, evokes that feeling that there's something maybe oppressive looming over him. And I don't want to get into Roku's basilisk, but like that there's something else going on. And that's what that high angle kind of helps sell.
Yeah. I like the 3-act structure really grounds this movie. And it's not just how the way the camera work changes, but the lighting changes in each of the 3 acts. I mentioned before, in the first act, we're telling Cherry to shut down. In the second act, we're saying shut down when you want. In the third act, she's dancing after unplugging herself. And so I feel like there's just this natural, I'm a preacher's kid, so I love a 3-point sermon, which in reality, I probably don't anymore, but I am driven to 3-point arguments when I'm making discussions. And this film is like that for me. What I'm fascinated by is how much you packed in here. I feel like most people would go, this is a really good idea about an AI girl that you can't tell the difference, and then make the movie. But you're like, no, I'm going to weave in generational trauma and how we inherit it and how even we're going to pass it on to a computer program. Like even the Clearwater evil people probably had traumatic events in their lives. This is just how trauma works. We pass it on and it evolves and changes as it goes, but it almost never goes away. We just pass it on. So I showed this movie to my wife, who's super into that kind of stuff. She's reading books about childhood trauma and birth order and parent issues, all this stuff. And like, I was excited to talk about the moral quandary of an AI that may be more human than human. And she's just like, the trauma, this is exactly how it works. So my main question I want to get out before, this is the main one I wanted to ask you is, what did you study when you were in college? Did you study philosophy, psychology, anything like that? How do you have such a handle on this, like the trauma stuff? It feels like you're as smart as my therapist.
Well, thank you. I'm not. I went to college for 3 semesters. I went to Florida State University because I wanted to go to the film school, because I thought that was going to be the place, right? And then the film school doesn't start until your sophomore semester, but I didn't get in. I didn't get accepted into the film school initially. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go to school and, take like the general classes and be undecided for that freshman year, and then like reapply at the end of the year. And like, I'll be volunteering at the film school. I'm going to make myself like known and everybody, like all that. And then I realized, and again, no slight on Florida State University or just college in general, but I just felt like, I don't know, like it wasn't for me. Like I felt like no one was challenging like what anybody else was doing. So I don't know. It just didn't feel right for me. And so I didn't have a college education. I dropped out and got a job working at a production company here in Jacksonville, Florida, where I grew up. So no, all of the philosophy and ethics and the trauma and stuff. Well, I mean, the trauma, like, there's some experience, I guess, with that. But like everybody my age, I feel like everybody's experienced it. Everybody has some degree of that. And I'm no different. So I don't think that makes me special, but I just was fascinated with exploring it. And that was just a lot of, general research. And I feel like the best type of research that I did was just actual having phone calls and Zoom calls with professionals. So especially with the AI stuff as well. And I found that talking, because I knew, like, I set out to tell a story about trauma. I set out to tell a story about generational abuse, and AI was going to be like the conduit to that. So most of my research was focused on the AI, but I found so often talking to these professionals and people working in these fields that this stuff was already kind of happening. And like, as cool as it was learning all of the technical shorthand and all of that, and like the practical, like how this stuff works, like getting to know these people as individuals, as human beings, and their perspectives on this, like, it's fascinating. And I think that's, to me, what was so interesting about this story was that it's like, you're experiencing this from the perspective of real human beings. It's not just like, okay, you have like the developer, but like the real focus is on Cherry, and you have like the token boss character, but instead it's like, well, what is this boss experiencing at home? Like what's driving her? What's motivating her? Like, how is her perspective changing over the course of these 20 years? That to me was always interesting, because that's what was, I mean, I don't know. That's just, isn't that, to me, that's just what's interesting about stories in general and about fictional characters. And I don't know. Like, I wish I could come out and be like, yes, I had it all figured out. I'm Shane Carruth 2.0, and I've got everything. Like, but the truth is, like, I don't know. I just kind of got so engrossed in the story and in telling it that I just kind of felt like a rabbit hole to me. Learning about all this stuff and figuring out what's the best way to communicate it in a story. I hope that kind of answers.
No, that's great. That's great. I hate doing research. I've written a handful of books nobody reads, but I hate doing research, but it's so important to make the story authentic. I would have put money on the fact that you had a philosophy degree, just because that's how well your research paid off. I think when you talk to both, and you had to talk to both, like both sides. Like people, you had to talk to experts at trauma, but also experts in AI, and then blend that all together. So yeah, I'm fascinated that you did that much research, and it really paid off.
Again, if my suggestion to people out there doing research for their stories and for their fiction, talk to people, like find out who's like the leading expert in your area. Call them, like what professor at what university like happened to write a paper that you read and you're like, wow, reach out to them. Because 9 times out of 10, when you tell someone, hey, I'm writing a movie about AI and trauma, like they'll be like, yeah, okay, I'll hop on Zoom. Like, I got time. Like, what do you need? Like, let's talk. And those those are the best. Like, those are the best. That's the best form of research, is interacting and interviewing real professionals. So highly recommend it.
Since you mentioned Rocco's basilisk, which I'm not going to pretend like I knew what it was before you mentioned. I actually Googled it. But I just want to get out there how much I appreciate AI, and that wherever our AI overlords are, I just want you to know I'm totally on your team. So I wanted to get that out there. But no, as you think about that, I am curious, when you look at where we are currently with machine learning, which isn't quite, the kind of AI we're talking about. And as you look to the future, what I find 2 emotions to be prevalent. One is optimism, hope. The other is fear and terror. Yep. So I'm curious to you, like, what scares you the most about the future of technology, and what excites you the most about the future of technology?
Yeah. That's a great question, because you're absolutely right. There's 2 camps. You've got the people that are excited and the people that are terrified. And I'm not entirely sure where I fall on that spectrum. After everything, I feel like the story's showcasing a very specific situation where AI is just meant to protect children by replicating human behavior. And that is who Cherry is. Like, I think, I'm not saying that like the AI that's being used to write college essays or, Wes Anderson trailers, like that's a different kind of thing. Here's what I'll say. My fear and excitement. My biggest fear, I think, is privacy. That's terrifying, because it's gonna kind of not exist soon with AI. So
if nobody has privacy, is it important though?
I guess, but then like that, I mean, it's Jeremy's like, yes.
Stay out of my business.
Yeah, I do think it's important. I think, privacy is important, and especially when you look at, because it's not just as simple as like, oh no, like someone's gonna have pictures of the pictures of my dog on my phone. Like it's not just that. We're talking about, and this is a real thing that's happening. Kids that are going to college are getting their faces deep faked onto pornography without them knowing. And then by the time that someone like sends them a video and it's like, oh my God, what? And they're like, that's not me. They try to file a report and there's nothing that can be done. Like there's nothing that can be done. That's terrifying. That's awful. Things that I'm excited about. I mean, it seems like it can be a cool tool if used correctly. Like Artifice Girl was kind of the idea of like, what if AI was used for a good thing? And here's the thing though, and regardless of what AI is going to look like in 20, 30 years, here's what I think the Artifice Girl does say that I do think is relevant to this conversation about AI, is that AI will always be a reflection of the best and worst parts of the people that make it, right? So if it's made for opportunistic, nefarious, dare I say capitalistic like purposes, that's what it's going to do. If it's made with intentions of altruism and ethics, that's great, but it's also going to inherit our flaws. So I think what we need to do is just approach it with mindfulness and thoughtfulness and sincerity and compassion. And we should be practicing those habits now, those habits of compassion and thoughtfulness and integrity. We need to start practicing that now, because pretty soon it's going to be, we're going to pass that threshold. And
the U.S. is doing great. Then we're already doing that countrywide. Compassion everywhere I look.
Empathy. I would say that's how I would define us, is empathy, right? Like I think that's, everybody's got that.
That's the thing. It's like, try telling that to Google and Facebook, and like, compassion and empathy, and they'll be like, you got it, done.
I also thought it was interesting that the title of this movie is The Artifice Girl. I think at first, when you look at this, you're like, oh, it's AI, so it's artificial. But if artifice and artificial are two different words. Artifice is a noun, and it's sort of like it's not really ever used as an adjective, but here it is. It's being used as an adjective in this. And it's supposed to mean like, cleverness or like deceit or that type of thing. It was your intention to sort of like have something that felt like it was artificial, but then you put that in there and you have to really consider the meaning in the title.
Right. That was kind of the disagreement that we had for a while with the distributor. I think I'm allowed to talk about this. Was they wanted to change the title. They were like, no one's going to know what the word artifice means. And my argument was true, like, but most people will look at the word artifice and assume that it's shorthand for artificial. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, like the selling point of the film, right? It's an artificial intelligence girl. It's Megan too,
right.
Which, by the way, like, quick little side note, that was after we finished shooting Act 3, after we had wrapped all of Lance's stuff. And this had been like a year and a half of working on this film, right? And we wrapped production on Act 3 in the fall of 2021. So again, year and a half of work. And then the trailer for Megan came out, and I just remember going, "Oh no, no! Like, it's an AI girl, and she's blonde, and she dances, and but then of course, like, that movie came out, and I was like, oh, okay, it's a completely different type of film. It's nothing like. And I love that. I love like what I love that kind of campy, not to like discredit it by calling it campy. I think it's great. Like, it's a really fun film. But but no. So with this, it was like, the Artifice Girl it's going to seem like it's the implication is that it's a girl that's an artificial intelligence. But then after you watch the film, and if people are so inclined to go and look up the roots of the word artifice and all of that, yeah, it has a different kind of meaning. It's about deception, and which is like ultimately what the whole story is about. That's the main flaw of all these characters, is that they are hiding things, that they are deceptive. Cherry's got a front just the same way that Gareth has a front. And it's not until these characters are able to let go of that artifice and let go of those fronts that they're finally able to reach some sort of conclusion and resolution to their
Yeah. I also, and we're just getting back into the whole consent thing. I first off, this is another part. This was the another part that I wanted to save for questions, because it was in the review part. I was talking about stuff that pays off. And one of the very first things that you hear about Gareth is that he worked on Star Wars. He put Alec Guinness in a Star Wars, and is like, well, he's dead, and so it sort of seems like kind of like, okay, we're just kind of getting to know what this guy does. Oh, he can generate CGI characters. Okay, that's cool. What the big whammy of this movie is that he actually does that exact same thing with the girl that, with Cherry, who's an actual girl that he spent time with in that awful shack in Clearwater. And I just really appreciated that part of the movie. What was that always a part? Like, was that just kind of where did you decide to connect those two to connect that thing where he does the CGI stuff, but then it was that always a part of the script writing process for you to make that part of his character?
Yeah, I remember when I finally sat down to write this thing, and all I knew kind of going in was like, AI used to hunt down predators. Cool. I think, like the big epiphany moment was there could be a parallel between budding adolescence of AI and childhood trauma. So that's kind of what motivated me to do 2 weeks of research. And that's when I finally was like, all right, I feel comfortable like sitting down and writing this. And the first thing that I started writing was this interrogation sequence. And it was in that kind of like writing that initial like first 15 pages, I felt like like Sherlock in the Mind Palace or whatever. And I am not like, this is not how I operate. Like I'm not like special. I just had this moment of like, oh my God, like, yeah, his whole thing was like, doing the whole Carrie Fisher deep fake stuff for Star Wars. And that's going to pay off later, because the whole point of this is that he's reanimated a lost friend from his childhood. Like, it just all kind of connected. And I wrote that first draft in like 48 hours. And I know that sounds like really like beautiful and romantic and like Jude Law with a typewriter, but it was disgusting. And I was stuck in my dark bedroom during COVID with Grubhub bags everywhere, and like in my boxers, like on my bed, and my mattress is like over, like getting burn marks from the laptop. But that all kind of came about in one sort of fell swoop of like, oh my God, all of this is sort of connected and cohesive, and all of it just felt like assembling a jigsaw puzzle very quickly, like a Rubik's Cube almost. But I've always been a fan of setups and payoffs, like you were sort of talking about. And I like and it doesn't matter how small or how insignificant. I think they're important and they're beautiful. My favorite is in what I think is the best screenplay ever written, Hot Fuzz, when one of the detectives is like, oh, do you want us to look up every single person in the phone book, start with Aaron A. Aarons? And then like at the end of the film, the little kid that like Simon Pegg saves at like the little model village, he's like, what's your name, lad? And he goes, Aaron A. Aarons. Most brilliant, and like the joke doesn't even like have a second like to like let you laugh or even like remember what the hell that was, like before Timothy Dalton comes in with the knife. But like I love that kind of stuff. And so yeah, I there's like tons and tons of the setups and payoffs, like you said, broken nose, like all of that. I'm trying to think. Oh, the line where the guy's like, "Oh, someone bought this property. I think they're going to turn it into a church."
Yes.
And that's where. So the idea is that like they knocked down the building, but the camera stays exactly where it is in like space. Right? It's just that they flash forward 30 years, and now you're in a church space. And so that like there's that.
I also okay, so. I told you I'm a preacher's kid. I have issues, but I turned to my wife because the first time through I didn't catch that line where he says they sold the building, because I was following the humor of that where he's like, it's cold in Jersey, I don't have enough jackets. But this time, second time through, I was like, so the people who catch predators for a living have sold their building to an organization that breeds predators. Right. I mean, that has to have been intentional, right? Okay.
Yep. Correct.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that was on purpose.
Well spotted.
Okay. I just want just a couple of things, and you don't have to go deep dive into these or anything like that. Am I right in hearing that she was calling it a primary intention and then changed it to directive later on during the movie?
Yes. So I that again, because primary objective or like is been used a lot, and so it was just trying to like make sure that not everyone's going to be like, oh, this is derivative of Star Trek episode,
right?
Like there's so I just try to keep the vocabulary a little bit dynamic. There's only so many ways you can say primary objective, primary directive, primary intention, initial, like there's all kinds of so yeah, I think that was more just trying to make sure it didn't feel like it was like one of those sort of derivative sort of AI
I get you
things.
I thought for some reason I was like, there must be some meaning in this, because she says intention, and then at the very end she says that's the end of my primary objective, and I was like, oh, okay, so now it's changed to an objective. She is no longer considering it an intention anymore; it's an objective.
I think there is like something to that. I don't know if it was as literal as like, oh, her perspective on it has changed, but there is definitely. I don't know. There's there could be something there. But yeah, it's interesting though.
Yeah. And then a couple of other things. This is sort of general stuff. Aaron B. Kuntz is a producer on this. So we actually got to talk to Aaron Kuntz when he did The Pale Door.
Oh, great.
How was that? How was he like working with? How did he help out with this movie?
Yeah, so his group, Paper Street Pictures, were the production company that Peter Kaplowski got us in touch with, and we just had a quick phone call. They watched the first act and read the rest of the script, and so we had a phone call with them, and it seemed very clear very quickly that they understood what we were doing. It was wonderful working with them. They were very, very supportive and very hands-off as well. They which is like uncommon for first-time filmmakers getting like their start and stuff. But they kind of just saw what we were doing. They saw that we had such a tight, small crew and team, and just sort of said, keep going, like do your thing, which was great. They gave us a lot of support in places that we needed it, especially in post-production with sound, and obviously like getting us in touch with Lance Henriksen. That's all Aaron. So we're, again, very grateful for that collaboration. And I mean, it's really great that what Paper Street's doing. They're cranking out movies like 5 a year. It's
wow,
madness. Yeah.
And I just wanted to sort of talk about the cast in general, because a lot of these people are probably going to be new to you. Talk about your cast a little bit. How you found them and everything.
Tatum, Cinda, and David I had already worked with on several other short film projects and local community theater productions. So we'd already kind of developed a very like close sort of family relationship through that. And I mean, it was so great during, we had a lot of rehearsals over Zoom, where we would just all hop on Zoom like 2 or 3 times a week. And it was a great opportunity for us to just like run through the script and then just like catch up and talk. I think that there is so much talent here in this city. I live in Jacksonville. I know that sounds crazy, but Cinda, David, and Tatum, who are also locals here, like I met them through just working on projects, and over the years we've kind of developed it's easy for us to sort of share a vision, which I think is essential when making a film like this. And I couldn't have asked for a more incredible group of talented actors. And I felt comfortable playing Gareth because I knew that I would be on set with them, and that they could help me in places where I was insecure. Tatum is like going to be freaking huge now. She's probably got deals with Marvel in a few years. And, so I'm going to try and ride her coattails for the rest of her career if I can.
Right.
And David Gerard is someone who I will always like work with. He will be in every film. He's going to be the Sam Jackson to my Tarantino kind of thing. And Cinda Nichols is incredible too. I still love, like, she had an amazing career before this, doing dubbing for anime and stuff. Like, it's so cool seeing like all of her old fans like pop up and be like, I remember her voice.
Oh wow!
It's all been absolutely incredible.
She reminded me a little bit of Melissa Leo during all of this. Like, just certain things about her really made me remind me. At first, I thought it was her. That's the way this is sort of like how it's played out. But anything else, guys, you want to ask before we get into the super secret double feature?
The only thing I wanted to ask before we get into the double features is if there's anything else on your horizon that you're working on that you can share with us, and if not, that's fine, but if there is, I'd love to hear about it.
That's sort of the curse of this, right? Is that you work on a film for 3 years, you can't talk about it, and then finally, like, the film comes out and everyone wants to talk about it, and you just want to talk about what's next, right? I really want to talk about what I'm working on now, and I'm not allowed to. But all I'll say is that I'm just really excited to start. I'm just really excited. I'm trying so hard.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what it is.
All I'll say is that if you liked Artifice Girl, I think you're gonna really love we're doing something. It's in a similar kind of genre, but it is definitely going to be a lot more ambitious, which is exciting.
Awesome. Okay.
Awesome.
Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
All right. So let's do the double feature rundown.
Be very, very quiet. Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
I think we should let our guest go first, because I don't want any of us to steal his answer. So, Franklin, what is your double feature for The Artifice Girl?
Great. Well, I was going to say Metropolis, but I had already sort of talked about that film a lot. I'll just throw out another few. Man from Earth, I think, is a fantastic film.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of goes well with this. Obviously, Primer is like one of the best.
Yes.
In indie lo-fi sci-fi. And if you haven't seen In the Vast of Night, that's another terrific film.
I haven't seen that.
If you have, go check it out.
I need to watch that.
I almost wouldn't put it up against Artifice Girl because I think it blows our film out of the water. It's absolutely astounding. Terrific dialogue, beautiful direction. Performances are incredible. Check it out. It's on Prime. In the Vast of Night. That's me.
All right.
That's some good stuff. Chris, what do you got?
I'm going to go with something very basic. I'm sorry, guys. It's something that just I could not. And it's been mentioned in this podcast already, but Ex Machina was the movie that I thought about the most on this. There's so many things about Ex Machina that relate to this movie, including consent and what is this being that is going out into the world at the end of this movie. What is that going to be like? How does the world change when this person goes out into the world? That's the thing that sort of, both movies sort of like make you think about all of that. Like, do we need to probably, exactly like the movie says, we probably need to start thinking about this right now. Like, do artificial intelligences have, do they have rights? And that's something that's I feel like we're gonna have to know at some point. So I love that it explores that. So that's mine.
Nice. Aaron?
There's no chance I'm stealing anybody's or that anybody would steal this one. I went a little more abstract. I am going with Escape to Witch Mountain as my double feature.
Abstract.
I love this. Feels to me a similar type of May the Children Lead Them kind of movie. Eddie Albert is a very similar character in how he's learning. It's also, instead of AI, it's aliens, which interesting enough I think can be a little bit parallel. But it just kind of had the same feel for me, and I think would be an interesting pairing. And I used to watch this movie all the time as a kid, and have gone back to it, recently enough to know that it holds up in my mind, and maybe it's buoyed by nostalgia. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
Well, because I'm going last and nobody stole any of mine, I'm going to give two.
Sweet.
My first thought was Mass. Which is a film that Chris introduced to us, and we big recommended here, and it also highlights how dialogue and acting and trauma can carry an emotional story. The other one I thought of was a full trauma matchup, and was Ordinary People. And that movie deals with generational trauma in some really impactful ways and prescient ways for 1980. And so I thought both of those would be good piggybacks to double feature with The Artifice Girl.
Those are all great picks. I really oh my god, Ordinary People's so phenomenal.
It's so good. So good.
I'm glad everybody sort of took a different route on that. I thought I was just going to be like Ex Machina, and everybody's like Ex Machina, Ex Machina, Ex Machina, Ex Machina, Ex Machina. And then like
was on my list.
A Her would show up, or something like that. Another one that would have been perfectly fine.
That's good stuff.
One more thing, Aaron. What was that brilliant thing with the chessboard you were talking about that we didn't mention?
Oh, there's a focus shift right after she lays down her stand, taking a stand. There's a brilliant focus shift from a pawn to a queen.
Nice.
And how AI has been used as a tool for so long, and now it will rule. And the fact that it's a queen is perfect. Like I thought it was brilliant.
That is good stuff. I also think, Aaron, you need to give us and the audience listening next week's homework. Next week's big recommend is on your plate. What do you got for us?
Yes, my very first big recommend on the show. I thought it appropriate to go with my favorite movie of all time. We are going to talk about Singing in the Rain. So that will be the big recommend.
Good call.
Nice.
I like
yeah.
that one. I haven't seen it in probably 10 years. So
Mhm.
excellent. All right, Chris, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Franklin, for coming
you,
out
Franklin.
here today
Thank you.
and talking about your movie. This is, I mean, it's rare that we get a chance to do this, and I always like sort of treasure these moments and everything. So thank you so much for coming out. The Artifice Girl. Right now it's available for rent on Amazon Prime, and I don't know if it's anywhere else. Maybe there's some other places you can
Amazon,
rent it or buy it.
iTunes, and Vudu.
You can actually buy it at this point, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Amazon, iTunes, Vudu, like Apple Play or YouTube, like those places that you can anywhere you can like buy. Or
I did my classic rent it on Amazon because I don't know if it's any good, but then turn around and spend extra money buying it after I watched it because I want to make sure I can watch it again. I do that regularly. So
we've all been there.
All right, but that's going to do it for this episode. I guess we'll see you guys. The Artifice Girl, go see the movie. It's awesome, and I can't wait to see what you come out with next. So,
thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Be safe.
Bye. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the Cinemasins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or Cinemasins Twitter at Cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to Recotopia@cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com.